Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in life when you give someone your heart, your soul, and your unwavering loyalty. You stand by them, believe in them, and pour every ounce of love into them, only to realize that they never truly valued you. They took your kindness for granted, mistook your patience for weakness, and assumed you would always be there, waiting. There is a certain cruelty in human nature. People don't appreciate what they have until it slips through their fingers. You give your love wholeheartedly, you stand beside them through storms, you make sacrifices they never even notice. And yet they move through life as if your presence is guaranteed, as if you are an unshakable constant in their world. But what happens when that constant disappears? When the one they thought would always stay finally walks away? That is the moment when realization strikes. The moment when they sit in silence and feel the emptiness you once filled so effortlessly. It is in that absence where the pain truly begins, because it's not about missing a person. It's about missing the love, the warmth, the security they took for granted. Life has a way of teaching lessons in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes the only way to make someone understand your worth is to remove yourself from their life entirely. No arguments, no final words, just silence. And in that silence, they will feel the weight of everything they lost. They will remember the late night conversations that once felt like home, the unwavering support they never had to ask for, the way you saw the best in them even when they didn't see it in themselves. At first, they might not realize it. The ego blinds people from accepting their mistakes. But as time passes, as days turn into weeks and weeks into months, they will feel it. In the small, quiet moments when they reach for their phone, only to remember you're no longer there. In the places you once visited together, now just empty spaces without meaning. In the laughter of strangers that remind them of the happiness they once had but let slip away. That is when they will truly feel the pain of losing you. Not in the grand gestures, not in the dramatic exits, but in the undeniable truth that life without you is a dull, colorless version of what it used to be. And by the time they understand your worth, you will have already moved on, shining brighter than ever, leaving them to sit in the consequences of their own choices. Strength is not in holding on, it is in knowing when to let go. There is power in recognizing when your presence is no longer cherished, when your love is being taken for granted, and when your worth is measured in convenience rather than commitment. The moment you realize that someone treats you as an option, you must remind them that you are a privilege. And the most powerful way to do that is by walking away with your dignity intact. There is a misconception that love requires endurance at any cost, that proving your worth means staying through pain, waiting for someone to change, or hoping they will finally see what has been in front of them all along. But true love, self-love, demands something different. It demands that you choose yourself over someone who cannot recognize your value. It demands that you walk away not because you no longer care, but because you finally understand that you deserve to be cherished, not just tolerated. The hardest step is always the first one. The fear of letting go, of breaking away from something familiar, often keeps people trapped in cycles of disappointment. But the day you decide that you are done settling for less is the day you step into your power. It is not a moment of weakness. It is a moment of awakening. And in that awakening, you do not need to raise your voice. You do not need to argue. You do not need to beg for love that should have been given freely. You simply leave. And when you do, the one who took you for granted will feel it. Not immediately, not in the rush of their ego convincing them that you will return, but in the quiet moments when they realize you never needed them, they needed you. When they see you thriving without them, when they hear your laughter echoing in places they can no longer reach, when they watch you become everything they never appreciated, they will finally understand the weight of their loss. You were never weak for loving them, but you became unstoppable the moment you chose to love yourself more. And that, more than anything, is what will make them feel the pain of losing you. Because nothing haunts a person more than realizing they lost something they can never have again. Silence is a language more powerful than words. There is no need for angry goodbyes, no need for explanations or justifications. The moment you decide to walk away, let your absence do all the talking. Because when someone takes you for granted, the best lesson they can learn is not through confrontation, it is through the undeniable void you leave behind. People assume that love is a constant, that someone who has always been there will always remain. They become comfortable, careless, and complacent. They stop putting in the effort, they stop valuing your presence, and they believe you will continue to stay no matter how little they give in return. But the truth is, love is not a one-way street. It thrives on appreciation, on mutual respect, on the understanding that nothing in this world is guaranteed, not even you. And so when you choose to walk away, let it be without warning. Let them wake up one day and realize that the person who once made their world brighter is no longer there. Let them sit in the silence, scrolling through old messages that now have no reply, searching for your familiar presence in places you no longer visit. Let them feel the weight of conversations left unsaid, of laughter that no longer fills their days, of a love they once had but lost through their own neglect. It won't hit them all at once. At first, they may brush it off, thinking you will return. But as time passes, the reality will sink in. The empty space where you once stood will become unbearable. The comfort they took for granted will turn into a deep longing, an ache they cannot soothe, because now they will see what they were too blind to notice before. You were not just someone in their life, you were the one who made it whole. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone who failed to see it. The moment you step away with grace, with strength, and without a backward glance, you leave behind a silence so loud it will echo in their heart forever, and in that silence they will finally understand the true pain of losing you. The most powerful revenge is not in anger, not in bitterness, not in desperate attempts to make someone regret losing you. The most powerful revenge is in your success, in your growth, in the way you rise from the pain they left you with and transform it into something unstoppable. You do not need to prove anything to someone who failed to see your worth. The only person you need to prove anything to is yourself. There is something poetic about watching someone who once underestimated you realize that you never needed them to shine. That while they expected you to crumble in their absence, you were busy building a life so magnificent that their absence became irrelevant. They thought they were your strength, but they will soon learn that your strength was always within you. The greatest pain a person can feel is watching the one they took for granted become untouchable. When they see you smiling, thriving, glowing in ways they never thought possible without them, it will shake them to their core. They will see you living, not just surviving, and it will haunt them in ways words never could, because nothing stings more than realizing that someone you thought needed you is actually flourishing without you. This is not about making them jealous, not about making them miss you. This is about reclaiming your power, about waking up every morning and choosing to live a life that is too full, too rich, too extraordinary to leave space for regret. It is about proving to yourself that their loss was never your loss, it was your liberation. One day they will look back and wonder how they ever let you go, and by then you will be so far ahead, so far beyond their reach, that their regret will be theirs to carry alone. Because you will have already built a life so beautiful, so fulfilled, that the past will no longer hold any weight. And that is how you make them feel the pain of losing you, not through anger, not through tears, but through the undeniable power of your own success. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize they have lost something they can never get back. It doesn't happen in a dramatic instant. It happens in the quiet, in the spaces where you once existed, in the empty moments where your presence used to bring warmth. That is where the pain of losing you will be felt the most. Not in grand regrets, but in the small, piercing reminders of everything they once had but never appreciated. At first, they won't notice. They'll assume you'll always be there, waiting just like before. They'll go about their days, distracted by their own world, believing you are still a part of it. But slowly, piece by piece, the realization will creep in. The late-night conversations that once filled their emptiness, gone. The unwavering support they thought they could rely on, no longer there. The way you once looked at them with love, with admiration, with belief in who they could be, that look now belongs to someone else, or perhaps only to yourself. Regret is a slow burn. It doesn't come all at once. It builds, growing heavier with time. It hits them when they hear a song that reminds them of you, when they pass by a place you both once visited, when they reach for their phone out of habit only to realize there's no message waiting for them anymore. The absence of you is what will teach them the lesson they never thought they'd have to learn, that love isn't a guarantee, that people don't wait forever, and that losing someone like you is a wound that never fully heals. And by the time they understand this, it will be too late, because you won't be looking back. You won't be waiting for them to catch up to what they should have known all along. You will have already stepped into a new chapter, one where you are valued, where you are seen, where you no longer have to beg for the love that should have been given freely. The pain of losing you is not something you have to force upon them. Life will take care of that. Time will remind them. The weight of your absence will settle into their bones, and one day they will understand that they lost the rarest thing of all, a love that was real. And when that day comes, it won't be your burden to carry. It will be theirs forever. There is a power in silence, a strength in choosing to walk away without a final word, without an explanation, without the need to justify why you are no longer willing to stay where you are not valued. The truth is, when someone repeatedly fails to appreciate you, when they make you feel like you are an option rather than a priority, they expect you to fight for them. They expect you to plead, to argue, to prove why you deserve their love. But what they never expect is for you to simply disappear. And that is where your power lies. When you leave without a backward glance, you do something far more impactful than any words could ever achieve. You leave them with questions they will never get answers to. You leave them with unfinished sentences, with echoes of conversations that will never happen. You leave them wondering when things changed, when they lost you, and more importantly, why they never saw it coming. That uncertainty, that unresolved emptiness is what will haunt them. At first, they may act indifferent, too blinded by their own pride to acknowledge what is happening. They may convince themselves that you'll return, that you'll break the silence, that one day they'll hear from you again. But time has a way of revealing the truth. Days will turn into weeks, and the silence will grow louder. They will begin to feel the weight of your absence in ways they never imagined. The lack of your voice, your presence, your energy, it will settle into the corners of their life, creating a void they cannot fill. And by the time they are ready to acknowledge what they lost, by the time they reach out in desperation, hoping to rewrite the past, you will have already moved forward. You will have already discovered that your life does not stop for someone who did not see your worth. You will be building, growing, thriving, while they are left with nothing but the silence they never expected to hurt them. You don't need to explain why you left. You don't need to justify why you chose yourself. Your absence is the only answer they will ever get, and it will be the only one they truly understand. Because nothing is more painful than realizing you lost someone who was willing to give you everything, simply because you were too blind to see it at the time. There is a certain kind of regret that no one speaks about, the regret of realizing too late that you let go of something irreplaceable. When someone takes you for granted, they assume that they can find another version of you, that the love you gave so effortlessly is something they can replace. But the truth is, some people come into our lives once, and once they are gone, no one else can fill that space. You are not a replica. You are not someone who can be substituted. You are one of a kind. And the moment they lose you is the moment they realize that what they had was never ordinary. At first, they may search for distractions, for replacements, for anything that feels familiar to the love they once had. But love is not something that can be duplicated. The way you understood them without words, the way you stood by them when no one else did, the way you made their world feel lighter, it was never something they could find elsewhere. And soon they will begin to feel the difference. They will meet others, but those people won't laugh the way you did. They will hear familiar words, but they won't carry the warmth of your voice. They will experience love, but it will never quite reach the depth of what you once gave. And that is when the realization will hit. The person they let slip away was not just another chapter in their life, but the story they should have held on to. By then, you won't be looking back. You won't be waiting for them to understand what should have been obvious from the start, because when you finally know your worth, you no longer settle for being an afterthought. You no longer wait for someone to realize what they had when you already know who you are. They say people don't know what they have until it's gone, but more often people know exactly what they have, they just never believe they'll lose it. And when they finally understand that you were irreplaceable, they will also understand something even more painful, that their chance to have you again is already long gone. Happiness is not something that waits for anyone. It does not pause for regret. It does not linger in places where it was not valued. The greatest power you have is the ability to choose yourself, to walk away from anything that no longer nurtures your soul, and to create a life so beautiful, so fulfilling, that the past becomes nothing more than a faded memory. When someone loses you, they may expect you to suffer, to drown in sorrow, to sit in the darkness of their absence. But what they don't realize is that you are not defined by their presence. You are not shaped by the love they failed to give. You are not someone who waits in pain for an apology that may never come. Instead, you rise, you heal, you thrive in a way that makes them question everything. There is no greater regret than watching someone you took for granted turn into the best version of themselves without you. Seeing you laugh again, watching you glow with confidence, realizing that the love you once poured into them is now being poured into yourself. That is what will haunt them. They will wonder how you moved on so effortlessly, how you found joy without them, how you became even more radiant when they were no longer by your side. The truth is, your happiness is your own. It does not belong to them. It was never theirs to break, and it will never be theirs to control. The moment you choose to live, truly live, without waiting for closure, without seeking validation, without looking back, is the moment you set yourself free. And in that freedom, they will feel the weight of their mistake, because while they are still looking back, you will be too far ahead for them to ever catch up. Their pain will not come from losing you. It will come from watching you create a life where they no longer exist. And in that moment, they will realize the most painful truth of all, that while they were busy doubting your worth, you were busy becoming unstoppable. There is a moment when reality hits, when the weight of what has been lost becomes undeniable. It doesn't happen in an instant. It builds slowly, steadily, with every reminder of what once was. And when he finally understands that you are gone, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, that is when the pain will truly set in. Because there is no pain greater than knowing you had something extraordinary and let it slip away. At first, he may not feel it. He may convince himself that life will go on as usual, that your absence is temporary, that time will bring you back. He may even attempt to fill the space you left behind with meaningless distractions, with temporary people, with anything that can momentarily numb the emptiness. But distractions do not replace what is real, and soon he will see that no one else carries your light. No one else understands him the way you did. No one else offers the depth, the kindness, the unconditional love that he once had with you. It will hit him in the quiet moments when he reaches for his phone but hesitates because he knows you are no longer waiting on the other side. When he hears a song that reminds him of you and realizes he can never share that moment with you again. When he walks into a room and expects to see your familiar face, only to be met with strangers who will never know him the way you did. It is in these moments that the pain will creep in, slowly but surely suffocating him with the truth. He lost something he can never get back, but by then it will be too late. Because while he is trapped in the past, drowning in regret, you will be soaring into a future he can no longer be a part of. You will be surrounded by people who appreciate you, by a love that does not require begging, by a happiness that is entirely your own. And that is what will hurt him the most. Not just that he lost you, but that he can never have you again. The greatest pain is not in losing someone, it is in realizing that the person you lost has moved on, has flourished, has become everything you once had the privilege of knowing, and now they are untouchable. That is the pain of losing you, and that is the lesson he will carry for the rest of his life. The most powerful realization a person can have is understanding that they can no longer access what they once took for granted, that the door they always assumed would be open has been shut permanently. It is not just the loss of a person that hurts, it is the loss of possibilities, of futures imagined, of moments they once believed were guaranteed. That is the true pain of losing you. There will come a day when he reaches for you and finds nothing but distance. When he calls out your name in his mind, but there is no response, no warmth, no familiarity left for him to hold on to. It will happen when he sees you thriving, when he watches from afar as you become everything he once doubted, everything he underestimated. The love he once believed would always be there is now beyond his reach, and that is when the regret will begin to suffocate him. He will try to rationalize it. He will tell himself that he can fix things, that one message, one apology, one moment of vulnerability will be enough to bring you back. But what he won't realize is that the version of you that once waited, that once forgave too easily, no longer exists. You have grown beyond him, beyond the pain, beyond the need for closure or validation. You have stepped into a new chapter, one where he is nothing more than a lesson you have already learned. That is what will haunt him, not just that he lost you, but that he lost access to the energy, the kindness, the love that made his world feel lighter. He will see you shine in ways he never imagined, and it will burn, because he will know with certainty that he can no longer be a part of your story. He will watch as someone else takes the place he once held, as someone else values you in the way he never did, and the realization will hit like a storm. He had something rare, something real, and he let it slip away. But by the time he understands this, you will have already moved forward, and that is the most painful truth of all. Not only did he lose you, but he lost any chance of ever having you again. And while he carries that regret, you will carry nothing but the beautiful life you created without him. There comes a moment in life when someone who once held your heart realizes that they no longer have a place in your world. It is not the loud, dramatic endings that leave the deepest scars. It is the quiet, irreversible shift when they understand that they have become a stranger to you. The pain of losing you will not come from an argument, from a final plea, from words spoken in anger. It will come from the realization that they are no longer significant in your life. At first, they may assume nothing has changed. They may believe that time will bring you back, that distance is only temporary, that your silence is just a test. But what they fail to see is that your silence is not a pause. It is a conclusion. It is the final chapter of a story they did not appreciate while they had the chance to write it with you. They will try to reach you, only to find that their words no longer have an effect, that their presence no longer carries meaning, that the power they once had over your emotions has disappeared. They will watch you from afar, trying to understand when they became irrelevant. They will notice that you no longer react, that you no longer care, that your world continues to move forward without them. And that realization will break them in a way that words never could. Because losing someone is painful, but losing someone who no longer acknowledges your existence is unbearable. The regret will come in waves when they see you laughing without them, when they hear your name spoken by others, when they realize that they are no longer a character in your story. And the most painful part, knowing that no amount of apologies, no amount of effort, no amount of regret will ever bring them back into your life the way they once were. By then, you will have outgrown the version of yourself that once waited, once hoped, once believed that they would change. You will have become someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who no longer settles for being unappreciated. And as they stand in the shadow of your absence, drowning in the regret of their own making, they will finally feel the pain of losing you, not just for a moment, but for a lifetime. There is no greater power than realizing that you were never the one who lost. You were the one who was lost. The moment you choose yourself over someone who never valued you, you step into a version of yourself that is untouchable. You no longer wait for apologies that will never come. You no longer seek closure from someone who never truly saw you. And you no longer look back at a love that was never meant to last. The pain of losing you is not something you have to inflict. Life will take care of that. Because time has a way of revealing the truth, of making those who doubted your worth finally see it when it's too late. He will feel the pain of losing you when he realizes that the world he took for granted no longer includes him. He will feel it in the quiet, in the absence of your voice, in the emptiness of the spaces you once filled. He will feel it when he watches you shine without him, when he sees you being loved in ways he never gave, when he understands that the chapter where he existed in your life is over. And no matter how much he regrets, no matter how much he wishes he could rewrite the past, he will come to terms with the most painful truth of all. You are no longer his to lose. But this story is not about him. It never was. It was always about you, about your growth, your power, your decision to stop settling for anything less than the love and respect you deserve. This journey is not about making someone else suffer. It is about stepping into your own happiness so completely that their absence no longer matters. And when you finally reach that place, when you look back and see how far you have come, you will understand that the real pain was never yours to carry. It was always his. And it always will be.